Hey, what's up YouTube? What's going on? Got a little bit of an interesting research study that I'm going to be sharing with all you guys today, and it's about lumbar disc herniations in the National Hockey League. So in this research study, what the researchers were looking at was what is the success of return to play in the NHL after sustaining a lumbar disc herniation in NHL athletes, and what is their performance afterwards if they were able to successfully return to the NHL. So the title of this research study is Performance-Based Outcomes After Non-Operative Treatment, Discectomy, and/or Fusion for Lumbar Disc Herniation in National Hockey League Athletes. So the research was done by Gregory Schroeder and colleagues, and it was published in the American Journal of Sports Medicine in 2013. And so a total of 87 NHL players met the inclusion criteria. 31 underwent conservative treatment, 48 underwent a discectomy, and 8 underwent a single-level fusion. So medical records were collected by the researchers from 1967 to 2009, and what the researchers were essentially measuring was, were these NHL athletes able to successfully return to the NHL after sustaining a lumbar disc herniation? And so they deemed this successful if they were able to play one NHL game. What was their amount of games played on average afterwards? What was their points scored on average afterwards, and what was their performance based off a standardized equation that they used that involved plus minus, penalty minutes, assists, power play goals, shorthanded goals, which was all incorporated into a performance measure standardized equation. So just to break down some descriptive statistics here about the population, the average age was 28 years old. They had spent about 8 years in the NHL. These athletes, the average games per season pre-injury was 56. Points per game pre-injury was 0.22, and the performance score measurement was 0.79 on average. And so the performance score, like I mentioned, incorporates plus minus, assists, power play goals, shorthanded goals, and it's valued different based on each athlete's position, whether that's goalie, defenseman, or forward, for what the researchers did. Now, for the results, what they found was that 85% of 87 of the NHL athletes were able to successfully return to the NHL, but they played an average of 136 games over just about 3 seasons. So just under 3 seasons, they played 136 games. And they also found a significant decrease in games played per season, which dropped from 56 games to 39 games. They also found a significant drop in points per game from 0.22 to 0.17, and the performance score dropped from 0.79 to 0.46, respectively. So these are very interesting findings, because what we're seeing here is that 85% of these NHL athletes, in which they collected data from 67 to 2009, were able to successfully return to the NHL, but they did so with a significant decrease in performance. So a lot of these athletes weren't able to play as many games as they were pre-injury, as well as their points dropped and their performance dropped as well. So that is very interesting to see. And to me, that just goes to show how much and how big of a factor injury prevention is for these athletes in terms of preventing a disc herniation from developing. Because what we just saw here is that when someone sustains a lumbar disc herniation, their career is likely to be shortened in the NHL, because these athletes that did come back, they only came back for under 3 seasons, and they were only playing about 39 games per season. And their points and performance dropped as well. So that's really interesting. And like I mentioned, though, this just goes to show how important it is to prevent lumbar disc herniations from developing in these athletes, because the lumbar disc herniation could be a career-threatening injury, and we could see this right with the study. And at the same time, 15% of these athletes weren't able to return to the NHL. Only 85% of them were able to successfully return. So now the thing is with hockey is that the sport involves a lot of bending and twisting. And when you combine that with carrying a hockey bag on your shoulder for many years and being in a bent position and always walking, combine that with bending over to tie your skates in poor spinal position, Combine that with being bent over on the bench. When you're tired, you have another poor spinal position. And if you combine that with poor exercise prescription or training in the gym, you're creating a recipe for disaster. And it's only a matter of time until something like a disc herniation may develop in these athletes. Now, as someone that is a former hockey player myself, I sustained a disc herniation at 20 years old compared to these athletes who were on average about 28. So that just goes to show you I was doing a lot of bad things when I was younger. And if I were to play professional hockey right now with my back, honestly, my career might be done. Or I could tell you right now, I probably wouldn't be able to play a full 82 game season, combined with all the traveling on the planes, combined with all the practices and all the other events and additional demands required with being a professional athlete. I don't think my back would be able to handle that. And that's just something that I personally think. And yes, I've returned back to playing hockey competitively, but I mean, this is a professional level now where you have an 82 game season. You're flying, traveling all over to different cities, practicing just about almost every day. Combine that with playoffs. It's a very long season. It can be very demanding on the back. And so that's probably why a lot of these athletes do not have a long career after sustaining a disc herniation, why their performance probably drops. Now, the important thing that I want to kind of mention all this is that it does go to show how important it is to prevent this type of injury from developing. So someone that specializes in preventing these injuries from developing, we can educate athletes about proper posture, proper movement patterns. So maybe that's when they're carrying a hockey bag, maybe they use a wheel bag where it's just they can drag it along the floor, or maybe it's just maintaining better posture when they're on the bench or tying their skates. Or maybe it's just the exercise program where we're not prescribing the wrong exercises and we're not prescribing things like leg press, like heavy leg press or high volume sit-ups, which will further increase or lead to a further onset of a disc herniation from developing these types of athletes when you combine it with the demands of their sport. So that's just something I wanted to talk about quickly because I thought this is a very interesting research study because we're looking at professional athletes and disc herniations. And yes, these individuals, 85% of them were able to return. Their careers were pretty short afterwards and their performance did drop significantly for these athletes. So, interesting stats. Wanted to share that with you guys though. Would love to hear your thoughts and what you think about this. Now, if you have any questions, comments, or anything that you'd like me to address in a future video or a future topic, be sure to leave a comment below. And until next time, guys, all the best and take care.